Revealed, single dad's incredible bravery in restaurant, he defies two aggressors to save a woman. It was an unassuming Sunday afternoon at Patty's Diner, where the aroma of homemade pies danced with the chatter of regulars enjoying their favorite meals. Jake, a hard-working single dad in his mid-30s, wiped down a table while keeping an eye on his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Her laughter bubbled up like the coffee brewing in the back, a sweet reminder of the joy he fought for each day. With the weight of multiple jobs pressing on his shoulders, he still managed to find solace in those simple moments. Unaware of the storm about to unfold, suddenly, the diner went tense as two men strutted in, brash and aggressive, targeting Sarah, a waitress grappling with her own life struggles. Jake felt a tightness in his chest. The words of his late wife echoed in his mind, "Stand tall for those in need." He glanced around, faces shifted in discomfort. Some patrons exchanged furtive looks. He didn't want to stir trouble, but couldn't ignore the fear on Sarah's face. The air thickened. Lily giggled, blissfully unaware of the chaos brewing. Before Jake could take a full breath, he stepped towards the commotion. "Hey, leave her alone." The words bubbled out of him, instinct fueling his courage. The diner grew silent, all eyes darting between the aggressive men and the man who stood up against them. Jake's heart raced. He faced the men, who rolled their eyes and spat insults. But he didn't back down. The fear crashed over him like a tidal wave. But alongside that fear was a fierce determination. A few regulars nodded in support, their faces transforming from shock to admiration. The table full of retirees whispered commendations. Jake was doing the impossible. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment hung heavy in the air as he pressed on. "Stand down, guys. You're not welcome here." These weren't just his words. They resonated with his unyielding belief in community, in standing for what's right. Yet, uncertainty flickered among patrons. Some cheered, emboldened by his courage, while others whispered about Jake being a troublemaker. That divide felt palpable, like an electric current. Jake glanced back at Lily, who gazed up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Her faith in his bravery steadied him. Just then, a frail voice from the corner broke through the tension. An elderly man with a kind face stood, shaking slightly as he lifted his hand in solidarity. "Yes, right. We've all had enough," he called out, igniting a spark in the diner. That small act of courage was infectious. Before long, more customers rose, forming a wall of support around Jake and Sarah. But just when hope flickered brightly, the aggressors squared up, fists clenched, ready for a fight. It hung there, a question looming: would Jake's actions ripple as a beacon of hope, or would the community return to the shadows? With the stakes raised and his heart racing, he braced himself for the impossible journey ahead. The chaos had started, and the truth was left hanging. What would he decide in that pivotal moment? The tension in Patty's Diner reached a boiling point. Jake stood his ground, blood pounding in his ears as the confrontation escalated. The two aggressors, faces twisted with anger, towered above him. Words were lost in a cacophony of shouts, the diners unwillingly woven into a tapestry of fear and bravery. "Let us get this over with," one of the men sneered, stepping closer. Jake's heart raced at the challenge, yet he held his ground. He could feel the warmth of Lily's small hand gripping his tightly, her innocent trust a bolt of strength against the looming danger. In an instant, everything shifted. Just as the aggressors lunged forward, the elderly man who had first stirred the crowd shouted, "Stop. You won't hurt anyone here today." His voice quivered, yet it carried authority. It was a collective breath held hostage, and Jake sensed the tide was slowly turning. Jake didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was the urge to protect Lily, or perhaps the elderly man's rallying cry sparked the courage of others. A stout woman from a table nearby stood up, brandishing a fork like a sword. "I've had enough of bullies," she yelled, brandishing the utensil as if it were a weapon of justice. The diners erupted in shared conviction as more voices joined hers, daring even to raise their silverware in defiance. With a roar, the two men rushed toward Jake, fists swinging. Adrenaline surged through him. He ducked and dodged, the air tinged with fear but also a fierce sense of hope. He and T just stood up for Sarah. He unwittingly ignited a fire in the community. The eyes of strangers were suddenly allies, and it felt like they were all in this fight together. Jake moved swiftly, fueled by instinct. He deflected a punch that aimed for his face, returning a quick jab to the aggressor's midsection. The atmosphere was electric. People gasped, cheers erupted, and somewhere in the noise, he heard Lily shout, "Daddy!" A mix of fear and pride that drove him further. Then, just as their confrontation reached its peak, an unexpected voice echoed from the back of the diner. A man in a baseball cap stood up, his stance strong and unwavering. "If you want to fight someone, why don't you try us? You think you can intimidate us? You're outnumbered." A strange silence fell. The aggressors hesitated, uncertainty flickering over their faces. They hadn't prepared for this. They hadn't anticipated the community rallying together. Jake felt the momentum shift. This was no longer just his battle. It was everyone's fight. But Jake's heart sank when he noticed the men's eyes narrowing. They were calculating their next move, and he could feel the dread creeping back in, a reminder of the fragility of their newfound solidarity. He needed to think fast. "Let us get out of here, boys," one of them snarled, taking a step back but keeping his fists up defensively. They thought they could escape without losing face, but Jake knew he couldn't let them get away, threatening another diner or another vulnerable person. "Not today," Jake shouted, taking a step forward, the fire in him flaring. The room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would he be able to turn the tide for good, or would this moment of courage lead to something even darker? The air crackled with tension, and the crowd held their collective breath. Would they chase the aggressors out, or would fear bring them back to the shadows? With everything hanging in the balance, Jake realized this was only the beginning. A new chapter was about to unfold in his life and for Lily and the entire diner. What would it cost to truly stand firm against the tide of violence? The moments stretched and twisted in the air, each second packed with unspoken fear and determination. Jake felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. He wasn't just defending himself. He was shielding his little girl, the community around him, and everyone who'd ever felt powerless. The reality of that sank in deep, and with it, a sense of belonging surged within him. "Are you all really going to just stand there?" Jake's voice was louder now, breaking through the tension like a hammer against glass. It reverberated around the diner, catching the attention of the uncertain patrons who momentarily appeared to be frozen in their seats. "These guys think they can intimidate us. Stand up. Stand with me." The challenge ignited something in the crowd. One after another, people rose, their bodies forming a makeshift barrier between the aggressors and the safe haven of the diner. The stout woman with the fork was at the front, her jaw set and eyes ablaze with defiance. Jake saw the man in the baseball cap moving beside her, fists clenched and ready. He wasn't alone anymore. The atmosphere shifted like a storm cloud losing its hold. With every moment, the group around Jake swelled, voices rising in numbers, chanting for strength, for unity. "We won't back down. Not today," echoed from the back of the diner, and soon, it spread to every corner. The diner filled with collective courage. It was louder than the aggressors could have ever imagined. Yet the two men stood their ground, no longer looking confident. They exchanged frantic glances, each weighing whether pride outweighed the growing chorus of unity erupting in front of them. Jake could feel their bravado faltering, and that emboldened him even further. Lily's hand remained squeezed tightly around his. She was small, almost lost in the chaos, but there was a fierceness behind her wide eyes. She wasn't just watching, she was learning. Jake could see it. As the din of voices rose, so did her confidence. "Let us show them what we're made of," Jake shouted, his voice carrying like a beacon through the din. He took a step forward, leading the charge into the unknown. "You'll have to get through all of us." The two men took that half step back, uncertainty written all over their faces. They were used to winning by intimidation, and now, faced with a wall of resolve, they were starting to crumble. "Leave now, and we want to call the police," Jake added, a steely calm overtaking him as he pressed the advantage. You don't want to see what happens next. But just as he thought victory was near, the larger of the two men sneered and took a step forward again, fists raised, defiantly challenging the crowd. It was the last of his bravado, but in the chaos, Jake felt a swell of fear. This wasn't just about physical strength. He felt a daunting wall of history behind him, the weight of every time violence had appeared and harsh memories that echoed through his community. Before he could act, he heard Lily's voice cut through his thoughts, clear and powerful. "Daddy, I believe in you." That one phrase did more for Jake than any rallying cry. It snapped him back. Here was a life depending on him, and that was all the motivation he needed. With renewed determination, he stepped forward. "Together," he bellowed. The chant echoed like thunderclaps, resonating throughout the diner. The air was electric. He could feel pride swelling around him, the strength of family, of community. But just as the aggressors hesitated, the unexpected happened. The front doors crashed open, and a heavy-set man, pale with urgency, stumbled in. "Everyone stay back," he shouted, reaching for something tucked in his waistband. What lay beneath drew Jake's sharp gaze, stirring panic in his chest. What had just walked into the diner, and how would it change everything? The man's presence was striking, a whirlwind of fear and intensity. He was out of breath, as if he had sprinted from a distant reality. The murmur of the crowd shifted to a tense silence, hearts pounding like drums in an ambush. Jake's instincts kicked in, every fiber of his being alert to the threat looming in front of them. "What are you doing?" Jake shouted, stepping instinctively in front of Lily. His voice was strained, yet authoritative, the kind only desperation can fuel. "Get back." The heavy-set man paused, confusion flashing across his face. "No, you don't understand." He brandished a small handgun, holding it up just enough for the crowd to see without pointing it at anyone. His fingers trembled as he spoke, each word falling like a lead weight. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just wanted to protect." Jake's heart raced. Protect? Did this stranger even realize the fury brewing in the diner? All eyes were now on this man, the atmosphere charged with uncertainty and dread. The two aggressors shifted nervously, their bravado wavering in the face of this unexpected chaos. "Put that down," a voice cried from the back. It was the woman with the fork, her determination unwavering. "Get out of here with that thing." "Wait," the man insisted, desperation leaking into his voice as he fumbled to explain. "I overheard them. Those guys," he gestured shakily toward the aggressors, "they're trouble. They've been causing problems all over town. I came to warn you. I thought this was your chance." Shouts mixed with gasps as the crowd processed this new information. Jake could see uncertainty flicker across the faces of those who had just rallied behind him. What was happening? Who was this man, and why should they believe him? "Why should we trust you?" Jake stepped forward, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "You're waving a gun around, for God's sake." The man opened his mouth to reply but found himself lost, his eyes darting from Jake to the aggressors and back again. "They're dangerous," he said finally, exasperation seeping into his tone. "And I don't want anyone to get hurt. Please, you have to listen. I know it's crazy." But before he could finish, the larger aggressor lunged forward, seizing the moment to take control. He threw a wild punch aimed at the heavy-set man, but Jake reacted instinctively. He stepped in front, adrenaline surging as he deflected the blow, the fist missing him by inches. The diner erupted. Cries rang out. Voices merged into a cacophony of chaos and fear as the patrons scrambled, some ducking for cover while others tried to hold their ground. Lily cried out, and Jake's heart dropped as he felt her tug on his shirt, fear seeping into her small frame. "Stay close," he barked, trying to keep his focus despite the madness unfolding. He had to protect her. He had to protect everyone. The heavy-set man stumbled back, nearly falling against a table. Jake felt a moment of empathy. This could have been any of them standing there, terrified and desperate. "Enough." Jake's shout pierced through the panic, a desperate plea for reason. "We can work this out. We're stronger together." But just as the words left his mouth, the larger man grabbed the smaller guy by the collar and threw him against the counter. Glasses rattled, and the nerves of the crowd intensified. Time slowed. A sense of impending doom loomed larger than ever. "What was your name?" Jake turned to the heavy-set man, summoning every ounce of conviction he had left. "We need a plan. Now." "I'm Benny," he stammered, eyes wide with confusion and fear. As Benny breathed heavily, Jake knew they were running out of time. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Would they fight? Or could they figure out a way to face this challenge as one united force? Jake felt a stirring within him, fighting against fear and chaos. Could unity truly prevail against this storm? But before he could voice the plan forming in his mind, the smaller aggressor broke free, eyes wild, charging toward them. What was Jake going to do now? And who among them would be brave enough to face the fight ahead? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as the smaller aggressor barreled toward him. The diner seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with tension. In that split second, he glanced at Lily, her wide eyes reflecting both fear and trust. He couldn't let her down. "Benny, get ready," Jake shouted. He clenched his fists, senses sharpening. This was no ordinary fight. It was a struggle for their safety, for their lives. The aggressor charged with a snarl, hands up like claws. With a swift decision, Jake shifted into action. He sidestepped, using the larger man's momentum against him. But Benny, still stunned, had yet to follow suit. "Help him," Jake yelled, urging Benny into motion as the larger aggressor turned to regain control of the situation in that moment. Surprising strength surged within Jake. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing against him, a heavy cloak he wore willingly. This wasn't just about him. The lives of everyone here depended on their combined courage. Benny finally found his footing, fear slowly morphing into resolve. He grabbed a chair and swung it at the charging aggressor with a surprising force. It connected with a loud crack, sending the smaller man stumbling. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and gasps, hope igniting like a sudden spark in the darkness. "Now," Jake shouted, "we have to push them back." Lily grabbed Jake's hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. "Daddy," she called, her innocent voice cutting through the chaos and grounding him. He looked down at her, seeing her worry etched on her face. "Stay close," he whispered, feeling a fierce surge of determination. He would protect her, whatever the cost. With Benny's help, they began to push the aggressors back. Each step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of their dignity, a sign that fear would not conquer them. The diners were emboldened, rallying behind Jake and Benny with newfound bravery. The woman with the fork was now shouting encouragement, her voice piercing through the ruckus as others joined in. "Keep fighting. We can do this." Though chaos surrounded them, a flicker of unity sparkled among the crowd. Jake felt it, a collective heartbeat. All of them gathered around a single purpose: to stand up against the fear that had intruded into their peaceful lives. The anger from the aggressors flared up, but they could see their numbers dwindling against the ocean of resolve crafted by the crowd. Then, unexpectedly, the larger aggressor found himself cornered, eyeing the sea of defiant faces. He faltered, realizing he was outnumbered. "You think you can handle this?" he sneered, but Jake saw the crack in his armor. Benny stepped gingerly forward, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. "Get out while you can. You're not welcome here anymore." The small group of patrons surged forward, their united voices lifting higher, filled with a persistent refuse to let fear dictate their lives. The tide had turned, and the aggressors felt it. Jake's pulse quickened, hope rising even as uncertainty lingered like a shadow. They were pushing them back, but would it be enough? Just as it seemed they might succeed, the smaller aggressor, now frantic and desperate, reached for something hidden at his belt. "No," Jake shouted, but would it be too late? As he lunged forward, he could feel time stretching around them, a moment teetering on the brink of disaster. What lay ahead? Would courage win this battle, or was danger about to strike once more? Jake's heart raced as if it were ready to burst. He could see the glint of metal flash in the palm of the smaller aggressor. Panic surged through him, but there was no time to hesitate. He sprang forward, driven by an instinct that propelled him as surely as the fear surged through the diner. "Stop!" Jake's voice was firm, rising above the din of chaos. He lunged, reaching for the man's wrist, desperate to prevent whatever was coming. Beneath the clamor, he felt the attention of the crowd shifting, each pair of eyes locked on the confrontation as if they held their breath, waiting for the moment's outcome. The aggressor sneered, wild desperation fueling him. You really think you can take me? His words dripped with venom, but Jake pressed on. A tangled mix of resolve and dread coiled tight in his gut as he felt the hard grip of the man's wrist slip just out of reach. Benny, adrenaline still coursing through him, saw the struggle and charged forward. "Get away from him," he shouted, swinging another chair with newfound determination. The second swing caught the larger man off guard, striking him in the back and sending him stumbling forward. But the smaller aggressor was far from finished. The diner erupted into chaos as the crowd surged, the sense of unity empowering them to rise against the threats visibly receding. Jake's eyes darted between his daughter and the unfolding fight, a pull from both sides stretching him thin. He had to stay focused. This was about more than just him. Lily's voice broke through the fear. "Daddy." Her hands gripped his tightly, but he gently cupped her face, grounding her with his gaze. "I need you to be brave, sweetheart. Just hold on tight." In that moment, the room felt electric. Each patron now seemed to embody courage and defiance. A man in a baseball cap roared encouragement, his voice unfurling through the diner like a banner in the wind. "Stand firm. We want to let them win." The words resonated, sparking a renewed collective strength. Jake saw the tension in the smaller aggressor's stance shift slightly. The desperation was morphing into uncertainty. "You want to intimidate us," Jake yelled, igniting the fire among the crowd. "This is our home. We fight for each other." Benny took a step back, looking at Jake with a questioning expression. "What is the plan?" He panted. "My daughter's here. We can't let them win." Jake's heart was a drum, loud and fierce, aligning with each courageous heartbeat around him. They needed to focus, to finish this. The diner was not just a place to eat. It was a sanctuary. As the collective resolve swelled, the smaller aggressor faltered once again. Sweat glistened on his brow. He glanced at his partner, apprehensiveness creeping into his demeanor. The more the united crowd urged them on, the more they seemed to shrink. But just as hope began to surge within Jake, the aggressor grinned, revealing something unexpected, a flicker of desperation twisting into rage as he tore at the waistband, pulling out a knife. "Let us end this." He spat. Jake's stomach dropped. He launched himself forward, fear mingling with adrenaline. No. In that heartbeat, time felt frozen. Would the bravery of the crowd be enough to counter a weapon? Would it end in disaster? The stakes had never felt higher. They were standing on the edge of a precipice, and only Jake's next move would determine what happened next. Jake's world narrowed down to the sharp shine of the knife, a small island of danger in the swelling chaos. The diner had turned into a battleground, the air thick with tension and helpless fears waiting to boil over. Instinct kicked in, a primal urge to protect what mattered most. He could hear Lily's breathing quicken, each inhale filled with fear echoing his own. "Stay close, sweet pea," he whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. He tightened his grip on her hand, and while he couldn't shield her from every horror, he could at least be by her side. The smaller aggressor's grin turned to a fierce snarl as he brandished the knife with renewed aggression. His movements were frantic, as if he recognized, deep down, that his front was crumbling. Desperation transformed into rage, and in that very moment, Jake could see the monstrous shadow behind the bravado. This wasn't just a fight. It was everything that could go wrong bundled into one desperate act. "Back off," Jake shouted, positioning himself between the aggressor and Lily as much as possible. He felt the strength of the crowd at his back, a tide pushing forth against the threats before them. Benny stepped in closer, fists raised, ready to defend. Seeing the fight ignite among the crowd, Jake took a chance. "Together, everyone, we can overpower him." His voice resonated through the diner, echoing the defiance that burned in all their chests. Each word became a thread, weaving together their shared resolve. Lily squeezed his hand tighter, her eyes wide with an innocent urgency that made his heart clench. "Daddy, be careful." A child's plea for safety resonated in his mind, drowning out the chaos around him. If answering his summons, more patrons started to gather, emboldened by their newfound courage. A woman stood up, clutching a salt shaker like it was a weapon. "We want to let you hurt anyone," she yelled, her voice cutting through the din, fueled by an overwhelming sense of solidarity. Jake surged forward, using the strength of the crowd as a shield. He reached toward the knife-wielding man, combing courage with fury. "You need to leave. There's nothing for you here." But the aggressor wasn't he listening. He stepped back, panic sparking in his eyes, while Jake pushed forward. Each inch gained was a step towards securing safety, not just for Lily, but for everyone in that diner. The threat may not have been eliminated, but they were there, together, standing firm. Just as their exchange intensified, the larger aggressor, who had been silent until now, lunged forward. "Let us teach them a lesson," he bellowed, his enormous frame surging toward the crowd, catching them off guard. But Jake wouldn't falter. "Enough." His voice boomed, surprising even himself. With every ounce of strength, he stood tall. "You think you can intimidate us? We're a community, and we stand together." Benny and others mustered the courage to move with Jake, forming a human wall. "Now," he shouted, his heart racing wildly as he felt the ground shift beneath them. Would they push back against this storm? It was a moment of reckoning, prepared to stand against the tide or get swept away. Outside, the day still stretched on with its usual hum, but inside the diner, the air bubbled with tension. Would they unite in that desperate surge or fall apart in the face of aggression? As the crowd rallied behind him, Jake held his breath, the knife flashing ominously in the harsh light. What happened next would define them all. The moment hung in the air like a cloud of electricity, static and ripe for breaking. Jake could feel the pulse of the room, hearts racing in sync with the rapid breaths filling the diner. Fear was a tangible weight, but so was determination. Then it happened. With a frantic movement, the larger aggressor raised his fist. It flashed through the air, swinging toward Jake with the intent to crush. Instinctively, Jake turned, his own fist clenched tight. He didn't have time to think, only to react. The loud crack of contact echoed like a shot, and Jake staggered back but stayed on his feet, adrenaline surging. It was a war cry igniting through him. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, while others surged forward. At that moment, every person in the diner transformed. They became not just patrons, but a collective force, united by the refusal to let fear dictate their actions. "Get him!" shouted Benny, his voice booming as he propelled himself forward, embodying the courage that Jake had summoned in them all. Benny's fist struck true against the aggressive figure, and suddenly, the tables were turning. The aggressor hadn't expected this wave of resistance. Jake felt a rush of warmth spreading through him. It was solidarity, enough to melt ice-cold terror. As the commotion unfolded, he caught sight of Lily at the edge of the chaos, still gripping the salt shaker tightly, her wide eyes reflecting bravery beyond her years. Her little body stood frozen, but her essence shimmered with the strength she drew from her father and the blooming courage of everyone around them. Altogether, Jake shouted, empowered by the raging storm of adrenaline and fear morphing into a powerful drive for survival. "Push him back." His voice sliced through the cacophony. With a synchronized rush, the crowd charged forward. The aggressor faltered, panic flickering across his face like a fading ember. Benny seized the opportunity, twisting the smaller man's wrist until the knife slipped free and clattered to the floor. A sound of sweet liberation, a mixture of cheers and shouts erupted from the diner, an anthem of their communal strength. They weren't just fighting against a man with a weapon, they were standing against the shadows of doubt and despair that threatened to suffocate them. But the larger aggressor wasn't finished. Off balance and enraged, he swung wildly. Chairs toppled as people scrambled to avoid his grasp. Jake's instincts kicked in again. "Lily!" he yelled amidst the chaos, his eyes darting across the fray. Time slowed. He saw Lily stepping further back, unwittingly moving toward the larger man, her small form vulnerable in the upheaval. Jake shot forward, navigating the whirlwind around him, every beat of his heart a battle cry. Stay away from her. He reached her just in time, wrapping an arm around her and pulling her close, shielding her from the storm. Their bodies connected, hers little and fragile tucked against his side, giving him strength. The rush of resolve surged through him, and he turned to confront the larger man, ready to protect his girl with everything he had. "You will not hurt her. Get out." With the crowd rallying in support, the tide of struggle seemed to shift, balance tilting as they advanced on the aggressors. There was fear still, of course, but it mingled with hope, and Jake dared to believe in victory, even as adrenaline continued to whirl wildly within him. Just then, The diner door swung open, letting in blinding daylight and a rush of wind. It could have been salvation, a chance for freedom, but it also introduced an unpredictable element that made Jake's heart leap with anxiety. Would it be the police? Or something worse? As the crowd surged forward, he could feel the air thickening once more. Whatever came through that door would decide everything. The door swung wider, letting in enough sunlight to blind, but Jake squinted, muscles taut, ready to spring. The moment felt surreal, as if time had dissolved. Then, a figure emerged through the light. It was a cop, uniform crisp, badge gleaming. Relief washed over the gathering like a refreshing wave. The officer's eyes darted across the chaotic scene, settling first on Jake, then flicking to the two aggressors who were still reeling from the earlier scuffle, grappling with their own disbelief. "Police! Everyone stand down!" The officer shouted, voice penetrating the uproar like a knife. Hope lit up the room. Strangers exchanged glances, sharing that brief spark of unity that overpowered the chaos. Jake tightened his grip around Lily, not ready to let go, not just yet. The larger man, still unsteady, sneered at the officer. "You think you can just walk in here and take charge? You're outnumbered." His confidence was an anchor in stormy waters, flattering in its robustness, but it had begun to crumble. "Outnumbered or not, you're done here," the officer replied, taking a step forward. He extended his baton with an authority that demanded attention. "I suggest you leave now without any more trouble." The crowd behind Jake rallied closer, feeling emboldened. The momentum shifted. They were now a wall of strength. The atmosphere crackled with the energy of a fight well fought, and Jake couldn't shake the warmth that spread through him at witnessing how far they had all come together. But the smaller man, still recovering from Benny's hold, lunged toward the officer, a knife of his own appearing dangerously in hand. The diners gasped, a collective intake of breath that fell heavy across the room. With split-second precision, the officer reacted. He ducked, avoiding the slash, then countered, his baton cracking against the smaller man's wrist. The knife clattered to the ground, mirroring the desperation that now filled the air. The sound of metal on wood re-stirred the fight in the diners. "Now," Jake yelled, rallying the crowd once more. "Let us show them what we're made of." In a thunderous wave, they surged forward, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and fury, their collective spirits surging as if they were a single organism. Benny lunged with Jake, the solidarity thickening between them. The larger aggressor, sensing the tide had turned, began to backtrack. His bravado evaporated as he locked eyes with Jake and the officer. A flicker of panic crossed his face. He was losing control. "Lily, stay close," Jake murmured, adjusting his stance. She nodded, her small hand clasped tightly in his. But just as the dust seemed to settle, a deafening crash rippled through the diner. The back door slammed open, splintering off its hinges. Another figure stormed in, wild-eyed and unpredictable. Panic flared anew as the crowd began to thrash about, scrambling for safety. "Jake!" Lily cried out, tugging on his sleeve as the chaos erupted once more. All he could see was the brazen silhouette in the doorway, someone who could change everything again, but he didn't have time to think. He clutched Lily tighter, prepared to stand firm against whatever storm was brewing. His heart raced. Who was it, and what did they want? In this fray that had already transformed them, he knew the stakes were higher. With the room on edge, Jake stood at the center of it all, ready for either salvation or a deeper fight. What next would this relentless whirlwind throw at them? The chaotic din of voices echoed throughout the diner, each note a mix of fear and determination, as Jake kept his grip tight on Lily's hand. The weight of uncertainty hung heavy in the air, only broken by the sound of pounding hearts and anxious whispers. Every instinct told him to protect his daughter, but he wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. They were united now. As the figure stumbled through the broken door, Jake squinted against the harsh light, heart racing. Who could it be? But there was no time to waste. Whatever came next, they needed to be ready. "Stay behind me," he yelled, positioning himself to shield Lily from whatever threat this newcomer posed. The room was tense with anticipation as the figure stepped forward. Jake's breath caught. It was another man, wild-eyed and frantic, yet his hands were raised, not as an aggressor, but as an announcement for peace. "Wait, please. I'm not here to fight," he hollered, trying to reach them through the noise. The crowd wavered, confusion spreading like wildfire. "Who are you?" Jake shouted, voice steady but wary. "I'm Sam," the newcomer panted, eyes darting to the aggressors. "I saw what was happening and came to help. I know them, they won't stop. But together, we can." Just then, the larger aggressor lunged forward again, fueled by fear and anger. Jake's instincts kicked in. "Benny," he called sharply, locking eyes with his new ally. "On it." Benny surged forward, positioning himself alongside Jake. Both men braced for the oncoming storm, fists clenched, determination tightening their features as they faced the threat together. "Step back," the officer warned, stepping among them, baton at the ready. But the aggressors were tiring, their bravado crumbling under the weight of a united front. Sam's sudden arrival had sparked an ember of hope. Members of the diner leaned in, emboldened, whispering encouragements that mingled into a chorus of strength. "We can do this, everyone. Together," Jake shouted, his heart pounding as he felt the warmth of support surrounding him. The tide was turning. With every moment, the air thickened with anticipation. Jake felt an instinctual pull, anchoring him to the collective strength of the diners. The community they had created, born out of fear but strengthened through courage, was ready to stand together. The more the aggressors fought, the more the diners pushed back. "Fight for what's right," others shouted, newfound bravery surging through them. The larger man faltered again, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes as he faced a sea of defiance. "Get them out," Jake commanded again. "And if you don't leave, we'll be here waiting." But just as it seemed victory was within reach, the sound of sirens blared outside. Jake raised his brow, heart racing. It seemed the police had arrived just in time. The panic among the aggressors grew. They were outnumbered. Fear seeped into their bravado, turning their fight into a retreat. "Let us back off, bro," the smaller one muttered, glancing nervously at the rushing law enforcement. "We don't want any trouble not happening," Jake shouted, rushing forward, voice a blend of conviction and rage. "You try to take what isn't yours. You don't walk away without consequences." In that moment, empowered by the unity surrounding him, he felt invincible. The patrons rallied alongside him, a wall of resilience that no aggression could break. Lily squeezed his hand even tighter, confidence blossoming in her gaze as she chanted, "We won, back down." The sight of his brave little girl gave Jake like nothing ever had. As the police poured in, their authority rippled through the diner. The aggressors exchanged panicked glances, weighing their odds until, with a swift move, they turned to bolt through the door. The crowd erupted into cheers, victory ringing out like freedom. Little by little, the tension dissolved. Walls of fear crumbled like dust under the might of shared courage. "You did it," Lily shouted, her eyes shining like bright stars amid the fading chaos. Jake pulled her close, heart swelling with pride. "We did it," he replied, his voice choking with emotion. "All of us." As the police assessed the scene, the patrons began to settle down, adrenaline giving way to relief and spirit. Even Benny was smiling, exchanging high fives with fellow diners who had joined the fight. Through it all, Jake glanced at his daughter, her small frame beaming with a light so bright it made everything else fade away. She had witnessed bravery in the face of danger. She had learned of community in assembling as one, and his heart exploded with gratitude. "We fought as one," he whispered, kissing the top of her head, "and we made a difference." As they stepped into the sunlight, the day's worries began to melt into laughter and recounts of the battle they'd just faced, cementing friendships formed through shared courage. Jake stood taller than he ever had before, strengthened by love, community, and the realization that they were never alone in this journey. And as they walked into the bright future ahead, he felt ready to face whatever came next because they had each other. Now is the time for all of you to make your voice heard. If you love this story, don't wait. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more inspiring transformations. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button right now to help pull us into the hearts of more listeners. Comment below and share how this story made you feel. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this kind of inspiration in their lives. Together, we can spread this message of bravery and community.